Build your business and improve your finances from the inside out with Joan Sotkin on The Prosperity Show.
Hi, everybody. This is Joan Sotkin, and The Prosperity Show provides a holistic approach to building your business or professional practice. Because who you are and how you live your life forms the foundation of your business, we focus on your physical, emotional, and spiritual health so you can build a strong base for your success. Along with a personal focus, The Prosperity Show also provides information about real-world business and financial skills that will ensure your financial success. My main site is prosperityplace.com, where you can download free audios and ebooks designed to help you build your money muscles and live a happier, healthier, and more prosperous life. Today's guest is Charles Glassman, who is a doctor, MD, who has been known as the Coach MD since 2011. This designation arises from what he has learned over his 25 years of practice as a medical doctor. Specifically, that many, if not most, problems people go to the doctor to solve actually stem from the challenges of daily life. Instead of giving a pill to try and make them go away, Coach MD's mission is to help people achieve total wellness, having more control over life than one could ever think possible. His goal is to deliver a new type of healthcare, transformational healthcare, turning sickness into health and health into optimal wellness. Body, mind, and spirit working as one. Most importantly, Dr. Glassman empowers you to take control over your healthcare so you're not controlled by it. It was that sentence that made me want to invite Dr. Glassman on this. Hi, Dr. Charles.
Yeah, hey there, Joan. Thanks for having me.
It's so good to have you here. So what brought you to the conclusion that you had to take a different approach to treating people as a doctor?
You know, just hearing the same thing day in and day out over the course of 25 or so years, I guess it was about 8 or 9 years ago when a patient came in to see me, and he said that he felt so good talking with me, but then he'd go back into his life and things would unravel, and he asked me if there was a way that I could kind of give him a kick in the butt between office visits, and we came up with a weekly email message that I started constructing for him, and I realized it was what I was talking about was not really medical stuff. It was really life challenges that I was helping him go through. And then I started not only emailing him, but emailing a lot of others. And actually, I'll back up. It was a few years before that when I actually changed my practice from a routine, regular kind of general practice that I'm sure your audience is well aware of, where you go to the doctor and you're sitting in the waiting room for 30 minutes, 40 minutes, 60 minutes. Then you go in the exam room and then you're waiting for another 15, 20, 30. And if you're lucky, you'll get 10 minutes with the doctor. That was my practice until 2002 when I transitioned it to what's called a concierge practice, which allowed me a much more intimate relationship with my patients. And it was really at that point where I decided that I was going to change my focus and really get to know my patients. I tried, and believe me, I always wanted to, just couldn't in the former paradigm. But by changing my practice, it was allowing me to open up to the kind of questions that this gentleman had for me and then develop some way to address them.
And are you still able to use your patient's insurance?
Yeah, for some things, yes, absolutely.
Because
yeah.
I know there's a doctor in Santa Fe where I live who does your kind of doctoring, and he's pretty much cash only, because this is what a lot of the concierge doctors have to do, because the insurance companies don't get a lot of the therapies that you're using.
Yes, correct. And the challenge was that it was a big risk that I took. We had a huge practice and it was a very big risk at the time. But what I noticed when I started that concierge practice, it was kind of the same old for a couple years until I said, I'm going to start really doing this the way I want to do it, and not just being retroactive, but more proactive with my patients. And then I started introducing talking with patients, opening up with patients, and also that helped me do this concierge practice initially, but I branched off on my own because I didn't want somebody down the line telling me that if a patient wanted some type of integrative treatment or just a preventative, let's say an IV drip, for instance, I didn't want a company telling me that that's not the way we do things around here, because I wanted it to be more of a conversation with my patients. And as long as they're not asking me to do something that I think could harm them, if there's something that they feel can help them and I'm willing to do it and able to do it, knowing it's not going to hurt them, and maybe it's not doing anything physiologically that we can prove, but maybe the placebo effect for them is working, and that's fine as long as they're willing to do that. So yeah, those kind of things are definitely not covered by insurance, and those are contained within the, what I call my retainer or whatever. But there are certain things that the insurance does cover, but I will not see anybody outside of that who's not my patient. Only for my patients who pay a retainer fee will their insurance work for some things.
Right. And, I wondered about the concierge model for a while because there are a lot of people who just can't afford it. And our whole medical system is set up so people can't afford it.
Right.
I mean, there's no such thing as medicine in America that people can basically afford. And it's a shame. And one of the reasons I was interested in what you do, I basically talk to business people and people who have individual practices and things. And I just think that the health of the person who is the head of the business affects the health of the business. Wow. And that because a business or a practice of any kind is an extension of you. And so I talk a lot on this podcast about health, and I'm very into taking care of your adrenal glands, because I mean, and so many entrepreneurs are pushing and pushing and pushing. Yeah. And what I love about your thing is this idea that you're partnering with your patient, that you give the patient more responsibility for their health care. And so could you talk a bit about that?
Sure. And first I'll mention the idea of the business owner being healthy, because on the way I was going up into 2002, from 1998 to 2002, it was not pretty. It was not developing into a pretty. I didn't have any physical ailments, but it was just a matter of time when they would develop, because I used to get a feeling in the pit of my stomach when I used to see the charts pile up, knowing that I was an hour behind, running from room to room, and it just was so stressful. And I definitely was not being as good a doctor as I could be. And I know that it was not going to be healthy for me. And I took a big risk. I had four young children at the time. We had just moved into a house a year and a half before, a new house. And this was this was something which I decided that I needed to do to make a change for my own health, and certainly for the betterment of me being a doctor. And that really has helped, because what I'm able to do now with my patients, when they come in, we're able to sit down and talk. It's not an in and out thing. And I'm able to tell them that, look, I may be your doctor, but I am never going to tell you what is best for you. I am going to tell you what my opinion is. I'm going to tell you what my educated suggestions are. But it's for you to be comfortable with that, and it's for you to make sure that works for you. I am never going to be that dogmatic doctor telling you what you have to do and discharging you from my practice if you don't do it. In fact, I get a lot of patients who come to me because their doctors threw them out of their practice because they didn't listen to them, because they didn't take the medicine that the doctor recommended. I'll never do that. It's a partnership. I'm more of a coach, and that's one of the reasons why I came up with that, the name, the pseudonym, if you will, Coach MD, because I'm a coach. I'm an MD, but I act a lot as a coach. And again, it's not only the body, but it's also the mind and the spirit, which is very important in dealing with life because we're not in a vacuum. And that's why I love what you're talking about on your show. It's a prosperity show, but you're very concerned about your business owner's health. The business is not operating in a vacuum. So many things affect it. And that's the same thing when someone walks into a doctor's office. They don't walk into this vacuum. They carry with them all the challenges of their daily life and also a history. A family history, a childhood history. All of that will affect their emotions and ultimately their health.
And one of the things I've noticed is that people want their lives to change, but they don't necessarily want to change. Or people want their health to change. And they are we've been trained to look for the magic pill that's going to change it. And to me, health is so much more than just the medicine you're taking. I mean, in order to avoid taking the medicine, you have to really watch so many other things about your lifestyle. And that's what you seem to understand intuitively when you said, I can't go on like this.
Right.
And I wonder how you're making the shift for yourself affected your business.
Yeah, well, it obviously initially it was very scary. It was for the first couple months, I felt that maybe I made a big mistake because it didn't seem like it was working. People weren't signing up. They weren't going to do it. We're getting, obviously, people are mad and angry and saying bad things and how greedy we are. And when I say we, I had another associate who joined me, and all these things. I had interviews, and the interviewers most of them were pretty positive, but some of them, when they aired, they would give a kind of a negative spin on it. And it was hard. It was definitely hard, but I knew that I was making the right decision. I was committed to do that. And ultimately it's really helped. It's helped my business because not only has it helped me as a doctor, but it's helped me to look into so many other things. And as I say, I wear many hats. And one of the hats that I like to wear is the cutting edge hat. It's allowed me to be on the cutting edge of a lot of even medical science, not fringe science, but medical science, where for instance, one of the representatives from one of the labs, she was so excited to tell me that her lab was now going to offer this special test for prostate cancer that will be available with their lab in January. And I informed her that I had been ordering that test for the last 2 years. It was a test that was done by another company that actually ended up buying that company out, and now they're going to offer it through. But nobody was doing this test. I just performed a test on a patient today. I'm the first doctor in the United States to do this test.
Wow! So you're an early adopter.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you're setting the tone for the future of medicine.
Yes, I'd like to think that. Yeah.
Well, you are. I mean, that's one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you, because I've been into this stuff for 40 some odd years, and I see how my life has changed and how it affects my business and my life. And the message I'm trying to get across to people is that you don't have to do drugs and surgery. And if you learn how to take care of yourself, it's going to be a very different life and a different life for your children.
Absolutely. And one of the things that people are seduced into thinking is that the doctor always knows best, and the better institution you go to, the better they have your back.
Right.
Well, I'll tell you the story of a very close friend of mine from high school who informed me that he had needed surgery because he had this mass on his spine, and I've been guiding him through this since August, from a diagnosis of a very malignant, aggressive cancer to a reddiagnosis of a benign tumor, albeit in a bad spot, back to a diagnosis of a malignant tumor, back to a diagnosis of a benign tumor, which thank goodness it turns out it was, but he needed major surgery to remove it. But he was told that he needed surgery that would have been life-threatening from one of the major institutions in Boston. And this is an institution that told him that he had cancer, that he needed this major surgery. And every step along the way, I said, whoa, hold back, step back. This doesn't sound right. And looking and getting that, because you have to understand there are some things that do need nuclear bombs, as I say. Okay.
Yeah.
Sometimes you do need the chemo. There are times. Sometimes you do need the medication. But I would say that 9 times out of 10, you don't. There are most of the time you have to take a step back. You have to have the right guidance and know to listen to the right voices. And that's very important, listening to the right voices. And if something doesn't sit well in your gut, then it probably is not the right thing for you. Now, with my friend, I've experienced this. I've experienced this with family members. And it's really unfortunate because most doctors don't want to hear you disagree with them.
Oh, but we've been trained. I remember when I was a kid and I had all these things wrong with me. I sinus problems and all sorts of things. Mm-hmm. And so I would do research. When I was 10, I would do research to find out why I was sick and my brothers weren't. Mm. And so I'd go to the doctor and I would say to my parents, I don't think he knows what he's talking about.
Right.
And here's what I think it is. And my father would say, Joan, he's the doctor.
Right.
And we've been taught to put doctors on this pedestal as if they know something. And what I've learned is that when a doctor makes a diagnosis and prescribes things, he's pretty much just making an informed guess.
Oh, you bet you got that right.
And until we help people understand that, then they're going to continue being given too many drugs and too much surgery, and their lives don't get better. Mm-hmm. It sounds to me like you're really interested. You're interested in the client, in the patient, and it's like you're able to get your ego out of the way. And you don't care if the patient says, I don't think that's right.
Yeah, well, ego is a big thing. And I've written extensively on this because getting into when I started this weekly message, I had to start looking into myself too. If I was going to give advice, I have to walk the walk. And in order to walk the walk, I am a very curious person and I like to seek answers. And I started looking into my own head. And that led to my first book called Brain Drain, where I looked into what motivates us, what sabotages us, what keeps us well, gets us sick, where crazy thoughts come from, all sorts of things. And I came across this idea of our primitive nature, what I call automatic brain. And I basically kind of put a spot in the brain where what ego is, kind of defined what ego is. And obviously it's a defense mechanism, but it's our most primitive nature, and it's always looking out to protect us. And so what the ego, even doctors have this ego or this automatic brain, as I call it, and they're looking to protect themselves. And what is protection? Well, it's making sure that you're one up from somebody else, that they don't hurt you. So if a patient comes in and starts questioning you, they're usurping your authority. They're stripping it down, and that causes a primitive reflex. And that primitive reflex is the same in everyone. It's fight or flight. So even the doctor will start fighting and fleeing, and they'll come up with all sorts of things. Doctors make up things all the time about what they don't know. And it's hiding behind the white coat, and you say, well, I've really taken this mushroom supplement and vitamin C and zinc, and it really is, when I start getting sick, it really helps me. And a doctor who's not knowing will say, the research doesn't show that any of that works. Oh yeah, the research shows? What research are you talking about? Okay, most of the time that's the go-to line. The research doesn't support it. I can guarantee you that doctor doesn't even know what research they're talking about. They're fighting and fleeing to make sure that they continue to have their stature as the doctor. And I have a new manuscript that's out there kind of being pitched right now to some publishers. And in that, I do talk a lot about how doctors think and how that does play into how patients are taken care of.
I love what you're saying. It's like, I just want to give you a big hug for having the courage to do what you've done. This is amazing. And so where can patients, or how can patients, or people, because they don't have to see themselves as patients, how can they learn the questions that they have the right to ask a doctor?
Well, that's a great question to ask. And the unfortunate thing is that most of the time they don't have the time, because most of the time, if you come into the doctor with a list of questions, you might get through the first one or two before the foot is out the door, because they know, like I knew when I had my crazy practice, that I had a room full of a waiting room full of patients, a stack of charts, and I knew that I could only answer very cursory questions. I couldn't really get into the meat of it. So if patients really have very specific questions, I would say first and foremost, before you even think of the questions you're going to ask, know that you're going to require time. Talk to their staff and say, look, I have some issues. I need to make an appointment with the doctor. It's going to be a prolonged appointment. I need to make this ahead of time. I may need 30 minutes, let's say, and can we somehow slot me in for that? Maybe it's going to be a week from now, maybe 2 weeks from now, but I really need the time to sit down with the doctor and ask the questions. So I think before you even think of the questions, make sure you have the time to address those questions.
That's very good. But I also think that patients or people aren't being taught enough about their own body functions to be able to think creatively. When I get a blood test, I really, at this point, I've become extremely healthy, but it's like I know how to read it. I know what it means. And there's a knowingness that I have so that I can evaluate what's being told to me. And I don't think people have learned how to evaluate the information they're getting from doctors.
Yes, that's a good point. And most doctors are afraid of their patients using Google. I encourage my patients to Google things. I learn a lot from my patients because I can't possibly keep up with everything. I can't possibly know everything. And I'm there to kind of separate the hype, separate the things that are scary and that are rare that they think that they have. I'm there to kind of set them straight, but it is a good place to start. And Labs Online, I think, is a website where you can go in and look at and interpret. It'll tell you what certain lab tests mean. And that is a very good resource. I think that's the website. I'm not sure, but you could just, again, Google lab interpret to how do I interpret my labs or whatever. And you will get sites that will come up that will really guide you through that. And I think that that's a good place to start, is starting to know your own body. Don't try to interpret symptoms, though. That could be dangerous. Interpreting symptoms, you can really get astray. And I don't even mean that you'll miss something or misdiagnose yourself. I'm more concerned with putting fear into you and into the listeners who are hearing this, that if you start thinking that your neck pain is possibly a tumor or some type of, thyroid cancer or whatever, or tumor in your spine, those are the kind of things that you want to have some type of educated person guiding you through that. So I think those are places to start. First, make sure you have the time. Second, make sure that you are a little bit informed, but not to the point where you get scared. Because when you're scared and you have fear, again, we fight or flee, and that causes us to do things that are not going to help us ultimately.
And I agree with you completely. I mean, absolutely. And there are also times, like I was told that I had 3rd stage kidney disease. And I was given a diagnosis of renal tube acidosis and was told that you can't change this. And I was shown the number, the GFR, and the number was too low. And so I went home and I said, okay, acidosis, what do I need? And I decided to start taking a teaspoon of bicarbonate of soda every morning.
That's great. That's perfect.
It neutralizes it, right?
Yes.
And I did all the stuff online to see what RTA is, and I did as much research as I could, and decided not to worry about it, because I've had so many things wrong with my body that I was told can't be cured, and they're all fine.
Yes.
And then one day I found online that I should be taking bicarbonate of soda for renal tube acidosis.
That's what nephrologists do. They give you bicarbonate.
Yeah, right. But they put it in a pill and they charge you a bunch of money for it. Right. And to me, I originally started studying medicine as a defense, because I had so many iatrogenic diseases. For our public, that means doctor-caused diseases. And I just figured I better figure this out for myself. And it's amazing how many things you can figure out if you get the fear out of the way.
Yes, that's big. That's why I had to really look in and try to understand what fear really was. And that's how I came across the idea of what I call the automatic brain, and which is similar to ego, and that just does, and that explains it. And what you're talking about is so common, and that's why I don't like to send patients for all sorts of tests, X-ray tests, and this test and that test, because there are certain blood tests that are really great, and as I said, some of these innovative tests are really great, and they're very scientific, but then there are other tests that are just going to pick up things that once a doctor tells you have something, that's very difficult to get out of your head.
Right.
And if a doctor tells you have something, you have it. And you're very fortunate because you really didn't accept it, but most people accept it, and then they define themselves by it, and they walk around every day wearing a badge with their diagnosis.
Right. And they call it my diabetes.
Yes. Exactly.
My heart disease. Right.
Yes. Exactly.
They own it. Right.
Yeah. Get rid of it. I don't want to have any part of that.
And that's my identity, my diabetes. And what really gets me is the advertisements for diabetes medicine. It makes it sound like diabetes is fun.
Yeah. Well, they look like they're having fun.
Yeah, right.
Right.
They're mostly overweight, but they're having fun.
Right.
So, well, this is great. I mean, you sound like someone I've known my entire life.
Right.
It's like we're both from the Northeast, and you just sound very familiar. So, tell people how they can get in touch with you and what you might be offering them.
Sure. My website is Charles Glassman, MD, medical doctor, charlesglassmanmd.com, charlesglassmanmd.com. And there you'll see there are links to my Facebook page. My Coach MD Facebook page has over 250,000 followers. And the reason why is because I feel it's very important to try to stay positive, a positive mindset. And I use that as well as my Twitter, which is Charles Glassman. It's just Charles Glassman on Twitter, I think. I don't think it's MD. I think it's Charles Glassman, at Charles Glassman. And again, it's to establish a positive mindset. And that's my Facebook and Twitter. I also have a YouTube page, YouTube site, but go to charlesglassmanmd.com and really browse around. I have this interview will be on it eventually, and I have other interviews that I've done. I have some meditation tapes that are on there that are everything. It's free. My blog is, I feel, inspirational. It has articles on mind, body, and spirit, my original articles. And I think you get a lot, you'll get to know who I am. And there is a contact there. And, I haven't done this much before. I haven't really put it out there. But after helping my friend along with his illness, I realized that there is a need out there for people who are looking for guidance from a doctor who's sensible, but who listens to them. And I don't really have that as an established service, but I might start offering it. So if there are any listeners who might be, who might think they could benefit from a service like that, you just go to the contact on the website, and you could just shoot me an email, and we might be able to work something out.
Fabulous. I want to thank you for taking the time to be with us today. I really enjoyed it. My audience knows I love talking doctor stuff.
Right. Well, Joan, thank you for the opportunity to get me to meet everybody on your podcast.
Okay, and I hope we can do this again.
Great. Thanks.
All right. So, folks, the show notes will be at prosperityplace.com. And I hope you're really listening. I really care about your health, because so many businesses fail because the business owner isn't in the right space physically and emotionally to handle it. And so my goal is to help you find your way to a really healthy life so you can enjoy your business and not kill yourself while you're doing it. So go to prosperityplace.com and you can listen to this and other episodes. And don't forget to download the free stuff if you haven't done that yet. And that gets you on my mailing list. And we send out things that are coming along. And I love to hear from you. What do you like to hear here? What would you like to hear more of? And what interests you? So just write to me at joan@prosperityplace.com. And I always answer my own email. And so that's it for today. Thanks for being here, and have a great time. Bye now.